Hey guys, here's just a video to help you with some of the terms that we learned today. The examples, I think you got through most of these in class, but just to refresh your memory or in case you had any trouble and just didn't ask, I'm going to just run through some of these examples and hopefully it'll make more sense as I explain them. So the first example here is asking for a line parallel to line AB. So AB is this line right here, okay, in this sort of pyramid looking thing, and you're trying to find a line parallel. So in order to find a line parallel, we basically are looking for a line that's on the same plane that doesn't touch. Okay, so I'm looking at BC, that clearly intersects. AD intersects. EA intersects. EB intersects. EC doesn't intersect, but they're not on the same plane. Same thing with ED. So the only one that looks like it's actually parallel looks like line CD. It's on the same plane, right? And they don't touch. Skew is when they don't touch, but they're actually on different planes. Okay, so a line skew to AB, we kind of just said it before. When I said line EC, I had said that it doesn't touch AB, but it's also on a different plane. So it looks like line EC would be valid there, and actually, so would line ED, right? This line ED and line AB don't touch, and they're on different planes. So you could have also said, line DE. And then parallel to line BC, let's see, BC is over here. Well, same logic as the first one. It looks like it's going to have to be AD. So AD. And by the way, these solutions are there. So you have them. I just wanted to kind of explain it as you go. So remember, parallel means they're on the same plane and not touching. Skew is not touching, but on different planes. Okay, so they don't touch and they're on different planes. All right, if we move on to, all right, that's basically the same thing. Let's look at numbers 5 through 8. Okay, let me cover up the. Oh, actually, that one doesn't have the answers there. The answers are on the back. So 5 through 8. Let's take a look. This is a good one because they're asking for a line perpendicular to HD. So this time we want to look for perpendicular, and HD is here. So perpendicular, if you remember, it actually intersects, but it intersects at a 90-degree angle. Okay, so in order for line HD to have a line perpendicular, we got to make sure it forms a 90-degree angle. So I don't know, one of the more obvious ones might be like line GH, maybe line CD, right? You could even go with line AD or even line EH. Any of those would be good. Okay, so it's got to intersect and make basically a 90-degree angle. All right, how about a plane parallel to plane, in this case DCH? So when it comes to a plane, you got to really kind of think three-dimensionally. This is a little bit hard. Like, this almost looks like a ramp that might have fallen over, or something like that, or maybe even a piece of cheese where the top corner here got cut out. So think of it three-dimensionally. So where is plane DCH? Plane DCH is essentially, right? It's essentially the front. Let me shade in that, and you can see that better. That's kind of like the front of this object. So if I want a plane parallel to that front, well, then I need to find a plane that has lines that are parallel to the lines that are on this plane, which would be in the back. Okay? If I pick this plane on the side or this plane on top or the plane on the left, those all intersect this front plane. And in order for them to be parallel, I can't have them intersect. So it's kind of this back one here, literally in the back. So to name the plane, I just got to pick 3 letters that are non-collinear, so like, ABF or BAE. So I could say plane, ABF, and that would be fine. Again, the answers to all of these are in the back. So you could, if you wrote like FBA, hopefully you'd realize that's the same thing. Okay. Then we get to parallel again and skew. So let's just run through those. Line BC. BC is this one here. So a line parallel to BC. Might be hard to see because I colored this in pretty far here, but there is a line underneath here starting at F and going through to G. There is a line from F to G. I'll try to draw that a little darker so you can see it. And that line would be parallel to BC. So that would be FG if you want to write it out. And lastly, you have a skew line to FG. So skew, I want to make sure it's not parallel, right? It's got to be on a different plane. So I got to be over here somewhere on a different plane that doesn't touch, or maybe even over here. You can almost see DH. Might be easier to use AE in this case because it is, they're not so close to each other on the picture. It's a little hard to see. I've already darkened the picture kind of a lot. You've got FG here. You've got AE here. they're on different planes and they don't intersect. So you could say line AE, and that would take care of that. All right. If you need any other clarification on the 3D ones, please just ask. And the last example, I guess, I'll show real quick is just identifying some of those new angle pairs we talked about. Okay, so corresponding, we talked about being in the same position. So corresponding angles in the same position, if we start with 1, 1 is kind of in sort of like the top left corner, if you will. The top left corner down here would be angle 3. So angle 1, angle 3, that's one pair. Well, instead of starting at 1, if we start at 8, we can think of that as like the top right corner, and 6 is in the top right corner. So you could say angle 8 and angle 6. That's corresponding. 7 and 5, same idea. And last but not least, what did I miss? I did 2. How about 2 and 4? Angle 2 and angle 4. All of those, if you start with one angle, have a match in the other group in the same position. So remember, all these new ones go from one group to the other. We're not talking about linear pairs. We're not talking about vertical angles like we did before. That would be in one group. All these new ones go from one group to the other group. Alternate interior. If you followed the way I explained it in class, you remember I talked about the river and being in the river or out of the river. All these angles are in the river. All these angles are out of the river. So if I want alternate interior, I definitely want to be in the river, but I want to be on opposite sides of the transversal, which is what we called this line here. So it looks like 2 and 6 or 7 and 3. Angle 2 and 6 or 7 and 3. Notice I'm not going to say 2 and 7. 2 and 7 are alternate. They're in the interior, but they're in the same group, right? These new ones have to be, by definition, go from group to group. They have to use the transversal. They have to use the two lines. If you go back to the formal definition, you'll see that. But the easy way to remember is it's always from group to group. Alternate exterior, looks like 4's on the outside. I'm sorry, that's not a 4, that's a 1. 1's on the outside with 5. So angle 1, angle 5. And then what is it, 8 and 4? Angle 8, angle 4. Alternating sides of the transversal and outside the river. And last but not least, consecutive interior. The way I said to remember consecutive is just think same side. Instead, that might make it easier. Oops, sorry, same side. So I'm definitely in the river because of interior, right? Interior means inside. And I got to be on the same side of the transversal. So that's got to be 7 and 6 or 2 and 3. 7, 6, 2, and 3. And I think that's everything. If you check the solutions they gave, I think we're going to get the same things. Okay? Again, it's a lot of vocabulary. Okay? It's a lot of visual, especially with the three-dimensional figures. So if you need any help, please don't hesitate to ask. And I'll be around, and I'll talk to you guys later. Okay? Bye.